right, let's jump right into a topic that is an absolute classic for your exams, gas gangrene. This is super high-yield stuff. In this first part, we're going to play detective. We're going to break down the culprits and the crime itself, focusing on the main organism and the devastating way it just destroys tissue.
So here's our game plan. We're treating this just like a criminal investigation. First, we'll look at the crime scene, the classic clinical picture you'll see on an exam. Then, we'll profile the main culprit and its gang of accomplices. After we know who we're dealing with, we'll dig into their methods, the path of destruction, the specific weapons they use, and finally, how it all spirals into a terrifyingly efficient, vicious cycle.
Okay, let's set the scene. When a question about gas gangrene pops up, it almost always starts with a very specific clinical presentation. This is the crime scene you have to be able to recognize in a heartbeat.
And there it is. This is your textbook scenario, the one you'll see over and over. A patient gets into a bad road traffic accident, and they come in with a severely crushed limb. The case notes might mention a foul-smelling discharge, sure, but the absolute #1 high-yield keyword you have to lock onto is crepitus. The second you read about palpable gas bubbles under the skin, your brain should be screaming, gas gangrene.
So, you see this horrific scene. What's the first question you ask? Who's our #1 suspect? What organism could possibly cause this kind of rapid, gas-producing muscle death, this myonecrosis?
Well, meet our prime suspect, Clostridium perfringens. This little guy is the mastermind behind more than 60% of all gas gangrene cases. If you have to put your money on one organism, this is always the one.
For your exams, you absolutely have to know these 4 key features. First, it's a gram-positive bacillus. Second, it forms a subterminal spore, so not right at the very end, but close. Third, that spore is bulging, it's actually wider than the bacterium itself. And finally, the really crucial part, it's an obligate anaerobe. That means it absolutely cannot grow where there's oxygen.
And this slide really brings those features to life, doesn't it? Look on the left. You can see the gram stain. See those thick, kind of rectangular rods? We describe those as boxcar-shaped, a fantastic visual to burn into your memory. Now look to the right. That diagram shows you exactly what we mean by a subterminal spore, just sitting there below the end of the rod.
So what makes C. perfringens so dangerous? Well, it's this 2-pronged attack. It's not just invasive, meaning it can spread through tissue, it's also highly toxigenic. It pumps out incredibly powerful toxins that cause all that destruction. It's this 1-2 punch that makes it so deadly.
But here's a really key point. Clostridium perfringens is not a solo artist. It rarely acts alone. Gas gangrene is almost always a polymicrobial infection. You gotta think of it like a gang. Perfringens is the leader, for sure, but it's got a whole crew of Clostridial accomplices backing it up.
Okay, so here's the full list of suspects. We usually break them down into 2 groups for exams. The established agents, which are the usual suspects, and the probable agents, which are a bit less common. But listen, don't try to memorize this whole table straight up. We've got a much, much better way.
Ah yes, mnemonics. These are gonna be your best friends in the exam hall. For the established agents, just remember P and S. P for perfringens, N for novyi, and S for septicum. A simple way to remember it? Think of your paranasal sinuses, or PNS. They're always there, right? Well, these 3 bacteria are pretty much always there in gas gangrene. For the probable agents, remember BSFH. That's B for bifurmentins, S for sporogenes, F for phalanx, and H for histolyticum. Lock these in your brain, PNS and BSFH. Done.
All right, we've identified the criminals. Now let's figure out how they pull off the crime. The pathogenesis is a step-by-step process that creates the absolute perfect storm for tissue destruction. And trust me, this is a very common exam question.
So it all starts with that deep, crushing wound. Think back to our road traffic accident. Spores from the soil get into that wound, but they're not alone. Other aerobic bacteria get in there too. These aerobes start growing like crazy and use up all the local oxygen. That, plus the tissue damage or ischemia that's already reducing blood supply, creates this perfect oxygen-poor environment. And that drop in oxygen, what we call a reduced redox potential, is the exact trigger the Clostridial spores have been waiting for. It tells them, okay, time to wake up, and they germinate into active toxin-producing cells.
So once the bacteria are awake and active, they unleash their arsenal. The incredible tissue destruction you see in gas gangrene is all thanks to a powerful cocktail of toxins. These are their weapons of mass destruction.
Listen, if you only remember one toxin from this whole talk, make it this one, alpha toxin. This is the principal virulence factor of C. perfringens. What is it? It's an enzyme, a phospholipase C, also called lecithinase, and its job is simple and absolutely brutal. It shreds the phospholipids that make up our cell membranes. It just tears them apart.
And the effects are devastating. First, by ripping up cell membranes, it just kills cells directly. Second, it causes platelets and neutrophils to clump together, creating these little aggregates that clog up small blood vessels, which makes the ischemia even worse. And third, it has a systemic effect. It directly suppresses the heart's ability to contract, which can lead to a massive drop in blood pressure and send the patient into shock.
Now, alpha toxin gets a little help from its sidekick, theta toxin. This one adds to the chaos by causing massive vasodilation and making blood vessels super leaky. This just worsens all the swelling and helps the infection spread even faster through the tissue.
So now we know about the weapons, but the true, sinister genius of this infection is how it creates a self-perpetuating cycle of destruction. This is the core concept you have to grasp to understand why gas gangrene can destroy a limb in a matter of hours.
First, let's talk about where that gas comes from. C. perfringens is what we call saccharolytic. It loves to eat sugar, so it gets into our muscle tissue and just starts feasting on all the glycogen stored there. As it ferments all those carbs, it produces a ton of gas. This gas gets trapped between the layers of tissue, and that's what creates those palpable bubbles we call crepitus. So that key clinical sign? It's literally a byproduct of the bacteria having lunch.
And this right here is where the vicious cycle kicks into high gear. The gas produced by the bacteria starts to build up and compress the surrounding blood vessels. This compression cuts off the blood supply even more, increasing the ischemia. More ischemia means the environment becomes even more anaerobic. The redox potential drops even lower. And what do these obligate anaerobes absolutely love? An oxygen-free zone. So they grow even faster, producing even more gas and toxins, which causes more compression, which causes more ischemia, and the whole cycle just spirals out of control, leading to explosive tissue death.
Okay, let's do a super quick rundown of the absolute must-know points for your exam. You see a road traffic accident plus crepitus, you think gas gangrene. The main culprit? C. perfringens. Don't forget its gang, you remember them with the mnemonics PNS and BSFH. The core mechanism is that vicious cycle of ischemia and bacterial growth, and the number one weapon in their arsenal is alpha toxin. Got it? Good.
So, we've investigated the crime scene, we've identified our culprits, and we've figured out their entire playbook. The critical question now is, how do we stop them? In our next explainer, we are going to tackle exactly that, the lab diagnosis and, most importantly, the urgent treatment strategies you need to know to fight this deadly infection. I'll see you there.